How do you keep yourself from acting upon emotions that come from a place of ego rather than your true self? And this is something I think a lot of people struggle with when they're going through a breakup, right? What keeps us like obsessed with somebody or unable to move on are a lot of impulsive emotions that come from a place of ego. So how do you identify when this is happening and then also keep yourself from acting upon those ego-driven emotions, right? So there's a couple of ways I think about this. There's the first aspect, which is probably the most important, is your own ability to understand your emotions and understand yourself enough to identify when this is happening, acknowledge when it's happening, understand what made this happen, and then also understanding how it feels for you physically. And then the second part is, how do you keep yourself from acting upon these emotions when you know it's happening? So I'm going to talk about the first part, which is your ability to identify and acknowledge when ego-driven emotions are happening to you. And I think something that's very important if you want to work on your own emotional regulation is being able to identify what emotions manifest for you physically. When you're feeling a certain emotion, when you're anxious, what does it feel like in your own body? And we're all very different. And if you ever go to therapy, this is something that a lot of therapists will ask you, right? Like if you're really anxious, you feel like you're spiraling, what does it feel like you physically in your body? So that when it happens in the future, you know what's happening. For example, I feel my emotions in my stomach. When I'm really anxious, I get a stomachache and I feel very nauseous. Other people may feel something different, right? So that's very important. Number one, what do these emotions, what does my anxiety feel like me physically in my body so that I can acknowledge when it's happening? Number two, what in my environment triggered me? What happened in my day in that moment that triggered me into having this spiraling thought, right? And a lot of times, for example, for me, if I'm going through a breakup, what made me spiral was probably something I did to myself. Maybe I creeped on their page. Maybe I went through our old text. Like maybe I'm just sitting around not doing anything and like creating a narrative in my head and telling myself that they're like happy without me and they never cared about me, whatever it is. What triggered you into having that emotional spiral? And then the last thing, and probably the most important aspect of being able to identify the difference between ego-driven and intuition-driven emotions and impulses is, what is the emotion asking me to do? What is the call to action? And what I found is that when my emotions or impulses are coming from a place of ego, they are frantic and they are dramatic and they are asking for an immediate call to action, right? So it's like an emotion comes up, I feel anxious, and it's like, be dramatic, call them 5 times, whatever it is. It's very frantic. It asks you to do something immediately. It feels like if you don't do it now, you're going to run out of time. You're going to lose them forever. You're never going to see them again. There's an aspect of finality to it. So it's super frantic and dramatic. And so being able to identify, first of all, physically, when this is happening in your own body, environmentally, like what happened that made you go into this emotional spiral, and then also being able to identify, okay, this is probably ego driven because it's asking for an immediate call to action. It's very dramatic is I think the first step in being able to have more emotional control and understand when you're having more ego driven impulses and emotions. And then I'm going to talk about, now that you've identified that this is happening, what do you do to keep yourself from acting upon those ego driven emotions?